from the Security and Defense Council. Good afternoon, esteemed colleagues. The beginning of implementation of the peace plan of Petro Poroshenko allowed to do several important steps to normalize situation in Donbass. As part of the implementation of the plan, about 1,200 civilians and Ukrainian military servicemen were liberated. During the last 24 hours, 28 Ukrainian military servicemen were liberated. The consistent position of Ukraine directed towards achieving peace and protection of citizens was supported by world community. This is stated in the decisions of the General Assembly of UN, European Parliament and Council of Europe and others. Several countries are providing realistic support in bilateral format. Commenting on the visit to the US, Petro Poroshenko stated that Ukraine has the highest status of defense cooperation with the US among all the countries non-members of NATO. We received everything we needed, intelligence, reconnaissance, radar, monitoring and other defense equipment, which will allow us to improve the efficiency of our weapons and modernize them. Thanks to the implementation of the provisions of the peace plan of the President of Ukraine, Ukrainian humanitarian assistance has been sent to controlled by the terrorist Lugansk with the help of the International Red Cross Committee. There are 600 more tons of humanitarian assistance, the canned food, cereals, sugar, and flour, which are stored at the warehouses of Starobelsk and Severodonetsk are on the way. Also, the Coordination Council of Volunteers is planned to be set up to provide more efficient support to the Ukrainian army. Their initiatives developed together with the volunteers on the regulation in the sphere of charity assistance and privileges for those who donate will help to provide assistance to our military. The armed forces of Ukraine and other law enforcement units started implementation of the achieved agreements in Minsk on the 5th and 19th of September. The heavy weaponry to the 15-kilometer line is to be withdrawn. I would like to mention that the armed vehicles and all heavy artillery is considered to be part of heavy equipment. We see the trend to reduce the use of the heavy weaponry by the illegal armed groups. The last 24 hours, the terrorists and non-controlled armed groups shelled the checkpoints and positions of Ukrainian armed forces in the regions of Donetsk Airport, the Baltsovo, Vinogradno, Gnutovo, Trudivske, Granitno-Piske, and Mogilogostra. At the same time, we see less shellings, and that is mentioned by the international observers. Yesterday, the terrorists also were shelling at this residential quarters of Putivlivsky district of Marinka. Ukrainian servicemen were firing only in response when there is the threat to the life of them, of the peaceful citizens. Two Ukrainian military were killed and two wounded during the last 24 hours. The facts of violation of the state border and the air space of Ukraine was not fixed by Ukrainian border guards. Also, there were no shellings from the territory of Russian Federation, which means that the peace plan of Petro Poroshenko is really implemented. As to the situation and settlements in NATO, in Donetsk region, the combatants continue to exercise pressure on the citizens They demand from the administration of the budgetary sphere to give the list of those who were going to work, explaining that they will be paying them salaries. At the same time, according to the information that we received, the combatants are paying to the workers mostly by food packages from the Russian so-called humanitarian convoy. In Kramatorsk, the Ministry of Interior started the operation on detecting the illegal weapons and explosives. As of the 21st of September, there were registered 57 facts of illegal behavior with the weapons. Also, the militia men seized 97 explosives, more than 1,000 pieces of small arms, 27 guns and machine guns. As to the reaction of international community to the events in Ukraine, the Minister of Finance of the U.S., Jack Lewis, stated they expect from Russia the steps towards settling the conflict in the east of Ukraine before G20 summit in Australia. The Secretary of Finance of U.S. stated that United States and Europe are ready to continue cooperation in the issue on sanctions against the Russian Federation until Russia continues to threaten the sovereignty of Ukraine. The deputy of the member of European Parliament from the Netherlands, Johannes Cornelis van Balen, stated that European Union has the proof of the presence of Russian troops in Ukraine that does not consider Russia to be a partner. We have the satellite shots. EU has proofs, NATO has proofs, but Putin will denies that. But if there are no Russian troops on the territory of Ukraine, how do you get the bodies of killed Russian soldiers? Asked the member of the European Parliament. The commander of the armed forces of NATO, General Bredlow, stated about the necessity to be able to recognize the hybrid war. Everything is not happening openly, like in the case of Green Man. First of all, we need to be ready to recognize when the hybrid war starts, said Mr. Bredlow. He also stated that NATO has to prepare the allied countries so that they can efficiently cope with the war of such type and establish that this could be aggressor. The commander of the armed forces of NATO added that NATO have experts who understand how to recognize the hybrid war so that everyone can understand who is who. Philip Bredlow also stated the fact of the presence of Russian forces on the territory of Ukraine. We do not know exact numbers, but it's obvious that a few weeks ago there were fewer of them, but part of them are withdrawn. Nevertheless, the Russian forces are still in the eastern Ukraine, he stated. On the 20th of September this year, for the fifth time, the big reconnaissance vessel of the Navy of France moved in the direction of the Black Sea. The presence of this and other ships in the Black Sea are considered by NATO as the support of Ukraine in its fight with the Russian aggression. The mission of this vessel is to intercept and analyze all types of signals which are received with the help of satellites. Any questions? Yes, there is a question.
We have information on Facebook. Dmitry Timchuka writes about humanitarian cargo from Russia. That cargo to Lugansk, they sent weapons for gunmen and also ammunition and for intelligence, some equipment. Could you confirm this information? We don't have information that. We don't have information that humanitarian convoy delivered any ammunition. At night in Luhansk region, LNR gunmen, they use drones. Do you know something about that? Our border guards who are on the line of defense. They observe the airspace. They didn't notice any drone during the last day. That is one of the examples that the leadership of DNR and LNR started to comply with paragraphs of the plan of peace, but not 100%. So we expect those steps from them, like Ukrainian military men do. And the last about the map. Has anything changed during the last day? Nothing has changed. All Ukrainian armed forces are on those positions they had during the last 3 days. They regroup our forces, and also they build engineering facilities and fortifications. If to speak about the map, from the beginning of ceasefire, that territory under control of gunmen, is it the same? Did it shrink? They pull back forces. That's why gunmen don't have heavy weapons and support of heavy weapons. And that's also they pull back from secondary position that was not strategic for them. But that line, which was on September 15, it is still there. Nobody moved anywhere, except those that heavy weaponry, which is mentioned in the memorandum. Could you clarify? Whom did they pay with their products? As they pay by products to people who work at enterprises in Luhansk or Donetsk regions. So instead of money, they give something in kind. Those people who maintain equipment, damaged vehicles, and who support electricity, water communication. So for those community services that do everything possible for this for the life of cities there. Any question? Withdrawing of our armed forces and to 15-kilometer zone does it mean that that we leave Donetsk airport, Debaltsevo, the main points where we had tanks and artillery. Artillery, which is under 100 millitocult, and there is artillery which is, has a larger caliber. It does mean that we pull all the armed forces for 15 kilometers. We pull back only heavy artillery, which is of caliber 100 and more and larger. So we prepare communication and everything for that. Ukrainian armed forces show how that should be done. All the rest stay there. There is information that gunmen in Russia started to pull. Do you have information? They started to pull back here. We have information that the movement has started, but not as massive as we expect, and we hope that they will repeat the example of Ukrainian military men. Ukrainian armed forces started a preparation for withdrawal, or have they started to withdraw? The process of preparation begins. It's the beginning of withdrawal. So you have to know where to pull back that equipment for it to be in a good shape and to be ready to be used to use at any moment. More questions? Thank you very much. And tomorrow the briefing will be at